How far are Edge of Eternities card prices going to fall? Well, in today's video, we're going to take a look at this market and see exactly what's happening with Edge of Eternities cards and what players need to know before they go shopping. Nobody out there is going to say to you that Edge of Eternities was a disaster. Not only was it not a disaster, it's one of the most successful sets for Magic the Gathering this year, and that's saying something. Welcome back everyone, MTG Moxman here, and thank you again for hanging out today for another video. Now, it's kind of hard to put this thing among the titans like Final Fantasy, but let's face it, Edge of Eternities continues to really move the market. Although it's not making my top 10 videos, the individual sales of these cards are something to pay attention to. Now, we know that this set had a lot of look-alike cards from the reserve list. We've had imitation cards a lot of times in the past, and Wizards tried it with the station mechanic. But how well are these cards doing in the secondary market? We know a lot of standard decks are being built on this. They are building cards from this series and adding it as new sets release and modifying deck construction ideas. Now, let's face it, when you have to buy 4 of something, that's a lot of movement on the market when somebody builds a new deck and they need 4 of a whole bunch of cards. If it does well, a lot of other people in that same space decide they've got to imitate it, copy it, or do something of the same line. And before you know it, thousands of sales have just gone off and changed the market. And this is where we find ourselves with a set like Edge of Eternities. It offers so much to so many players that there's a lot of value here and a lot of cards that are being underestimated. Now, you notice I just mentioned standard. I haven't even jumped into what's happening with Commander, because Commander players look a lot farther than a standard player. They're looking at the 4-year, 10-year mark. Where can things go in the future? Which cards do I need to pick up now while they're at a lower price? And when it comes to Edge of Eternities, the prices have settled. The market has decided where these cards are valued at, and that leaves a lot of room for players to take a look. Now, I'm just going to show you a couple of cards, and of course, I'm going to start with the mana base, because as with any good set, a lot of players look toward the mana base of a set to see if there's a future for those cards in a whole bunch of different formats. So here we have the Titanic Godcore, and this is the borderless Galaxy foil. This is the creme de la creme for this land. It's 64 bucks. $64 to get this copy. Now, if you look at the price history on the screen right there, it's been as high as $250 on the pre-order. It sold some copies, of course, and it sold copies all the way down the hill. Okay, this thing is settling now at a much lower price point, and it still continues to move copies in the market. Players are buying it. They are wondering where it's going to go, and a lot of players believe there's a future for this card. And if this version is too expensive, let's not forget, they've got just the borderless edition one, which is like $19.65. It's not going to break anybody's bank to buy that one, or just a regular one, which, by the way, I think is the best artwork for this particular card. And that one is $19.90. So what's going on with this card? Let's not forget that these lands don't come into play untapped. They add 1 mana of any color, but they do have the station effect. And in this case, this one says station 12 or more. Add 1 blue mana for each artifact you control. This is an imitation and a pale imitation of course, Tolarian Academy from the reserve list. It is a version that isn't broken. Now, a lot of people will say this is mid. It's worth something. It's going to be played in the future somewhere, probably Commander, but where are we going to derive value? How are we going to make the station effect work for us? How are we going to cheat on counters to a card like this to really make it work? Because getting that many creatures out to use the station effect doesn't make a lot of sense when you've got to tap that creature to make the effect, go on to the Godcore or any of these lands. So for that reason, players haven't been piling on this thing. And I've tried this card numerous times in different standard decks. It has never worked so far to the point where I consider I must have this card in my deck. Sure, it's great when it works, but more often than not, it never pans out the way you hope it would. Yeah, it's great to get a lot of mana, but people keep beating up your artifacts. So keep these kind of things in mind. There are going to be pluses for this thing down the road. There are going to be certain formats. It's going to be more readily powerful and really driving factors. But right now, that's not the case. And for that reason, this card is losing value and it's not holding. But that doesn't mean that the future is decided for cards like this. And that's where players always have to remember, putting counters, building things on, proliferate. There's a lot of different ways of considering how cards can get counters and what things will happen in the future. These cards are mythic. They are difficult to find. And we know that people aren't just cracking boxes anymore, even though it's a great set. People are buying packs, which means we're not having a ton of new inventory come into the market. Now, if I jumped over, though, and we looked at the sales for the card, if I said, this card isn't selling, well, you'd be lying, because the card is selling. It's selling hundreds of copies every single week in all the different variations of this card. There's movement all the time. Look at the prices, $13, $15, $14. You can look there and see some cards go as low as $12. People are taking a chance because they think it's going to pan out. Speculators and flippers are in here as well in that same saucepan, kind of mixing things up, keeping the card above a certain value. Should the card be this high right now? Absolutely not. The card should be down about $8, but it's not there yet. Although it's still losing value, this is a card to pay attention to, because the upside of a card like this is just monstrous if it gets some kind of push to make it a better card. But with the station effect the way it is right now, there's no reason for this card to be tipping the scales in its favor. So keep that in mind. It's a great card, but wait for this one to fall. I think it's got more room. Now, if I jumped over and showed you other cards, like Caravan, the Memorial World, okay, borderless galaxy foil, this thing's like $20, okay? Here it is, $13.95. Now, this one's more interesting for me because although it's losing value and it's not expensive, we can't forget that the living planet here, the Memorial World, says for one red and one other, you sacrifice a land and create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact. Okay, but think about a landfall deck. There are reasons to sacrifice your lands. Okay, and then be able to draw those lands back in with like an Ice Till Explorer. A card like this can actually have multi-functions. Not only are you giving yourself a blocker, you're also being able to regurgitate the lands you've sacrificed for whichever lands you're sacking. Could come back with trigger effects as well. I don't know. It depends on what you're looking at. But a card like this, although it's super low in value, it seems to have a little bit more of a drive than people realize when they look at how the decks are being built right now. Is there a massive future for the card? I don't think so. But I've been proven wrong too many times to ever discount cards like this and the mechanics they contain. And the last one I want to share with you guys is, of course, going to be Evendo, the Waking Haven. This, of course, is an imitation of Gaia's Cradle. We've talked about these cards months ago when they first dropped. We had these things on our radar. Now, these cards have all dropped in value, and this one, when we look at the Galaxy Foil, and don't forget there's other versions, but the Galaxy Foil is still holding fairly well, $74. As an imitation of Gaia's Cradle, the station effect, again, a lot of people feel it's a mid card. And what I mean by that is, when you look at this card, you have to have a lot of green creatures out. And if you get those green creatures out, do you really want to use the station effect to try to get to the Gaia's Cradle, or you just want to pile on more big creatures? Well, that will depend if you have to block or not block. It also depends on some of the other creature cards you're using that maybe can be pumped up very quickly. Cards that came from Edge of Eternities like the Orioboid, that, one that puts the +1/+1 counters. I probably pronounced that horribly, but that's okay. You guys will forgive me in the comment section. You can look at that and say, that thing will put a lot of +1/+1 counters across a whole bunch. Maybe that will help you get to the station effect. But in standard, by that point, the game's probably already over if the thing's on the board for a turn or two. People tend to forget how quickly a standard game can go nowadays, but in the long-term format of Commander, where players can take years to build decks and refine them, these cards are likely going to find homes. If you have a Gaia's Cradle, why not add this card to it or add that card to it? Some of these cards from Edge of Eternities will never be big, heavy hitters, but they're going to have a long-term health, which brings us back to the beginning. When we look at the value of the cards from Edge of Eternities, a lot of these cards, yes, they absolutely dropped in value and became a lot more affordable, but nothing crashed. Almost every card became a gentle, sloping value that is now locked in place, and the overall value in a box is surprisingly high. Not just for a collector box, but even a play booster box. There's a lot of individual cards that are holding value right now, and that's because of the fact that Edge of Eternities is being used broadly across a lot of different standard decks, as well as Commander and other formats. Because of that, you have a lot of draw and appeal. A lot of values are holding higher because people are constantly looking for the cards. And I've seen the wish lists of many of these stores where people hope that they come into stock. And it's truly kind of shocking to see how many people are looking for some of these cards. And if you go on websites, and even the land cards I shared with you today, all those cards are out of stock. They're very hard to find. the initial waves that came out and had people buying them, people aren't turning those cards in to trade in value. They're holding on to them long term, which means although the prices aren't going up, they're not dropping either. You have to go to things like TCG Player, Card Market, Card Kingdom. You have to go to the bigger stores, the bigger vendors out there to try to find these cards in some kind of giant platform because they're just not readily available at the local level for many people. Which brings us back to where are these things going to go in the future? Well, of course, for a couple of years, I'm expecting many of these cards to stay pretty high. And everyone out there better hope that there's no crazy synergy that drops in any of these upcoming sets to boost up or cheat counters onto those lands or any of the other cards inside the set, because you'll have people buying these things in a frenzy. And as you guys notice, a lot of scalpers and flippers out there will be ahead of the curve. They will be ready for this, or they're already accumulating positions in some of these cards. And with the prices the way they are, no, they're not dirt cheap, and they're probably still dropping right now. Over time, the next few months, you'll probably see them actually even level out a little bit lower for some of the cards that aren't being played in Standard. But all it takes is one thing to turn things around and cause things to skyrocket. I would love to hear your opinions inside the comment section today. And I want to thank you all for stopping by the channel. Edge of Eternities is a real surprising addition. And I myself am very impressed with how I thought the set was going to be and how wrong I was when it actually dropped. It has been just a fantastic set to play. And its long-term health seems readily assured. And I think players actually know it too. Thanks again for hanging out. Thanks for being here on the channel. Name your top 5 cards from Edge of Eternities. I'd love to see that in the comment section. Thanks again. We'll see you tomorrow with another video. Well, here we are again at the end of the video. And if you're seeing all the amazing people who support this channel each and every day start popping up on your screen, then you know what? We've come to the end of the video. The right place to sit there and reflect and think about how awesome it is to be here each and every day on YouTube, being lucky enough to be one of those content creators putting out content for everyone to enjoy. So thanks again to my patrons and my YouTube membership members. See you again. We'll be back tomorrow. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Welcome back to the end of the video. There's like no coffee here. The ramble and the jamble always continues. So, you got Avatar around the corner. Lorwyn Eclipse coming up. And then, of course, we're going to be into 2026 far in, because Lorwyn's not coming out until, what, January. And you look at Edge of Eternities and all the little ways they put this set together, and all the times I'm seeing these cards appear. Regular Friday Magic, Saturday, casual play, as well as Arena. I look at it and say there's just too many uses for the cards. There's just too much fun factored into this set. And it reminds me of Tarkir Dragonstorm. They did a good job with it. And although some people may like the space theme, I actually think everything kind of fits. Imagine a part of the multiverse that travels in a different way and didn't have on-paths to get around, didn't have planeswalkers jetting around. Or maybe those worlds have never seen a planeswalker other than Tezzeret who appeared. Either way, I like the feel and what they did. And it's funny when you look at other sets you may not be as happy with, and you look back and you go, that's a good moment, man. But the values of those cards are holding far stronger than I would have expected against anything other than Tarkir Dragonstorm. Even Bloomburrow's not holding up compared to these two sets now, and that's very interesting. Cards are still being bought, but in very low amounts. So anyway, that's where we end things off. That's what this ramble is all about. And I can't wait to see what happens when we start seeing Avatar cards. I'm hearing a little bit of negativity threads appearing, but I don't know until I see the cards. I actually like the look of what we saw already, so I'm kind of curious how this one comes out. Anyway, thanks again. Guys, have a great one. Ramble, jamble.